Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about when it comes to things like antioxidants, phytonutrients, a lot of these things in our diet. One of the issues that we run into when we start discussing eating too much processed food, flexible dieting, a lot of these things, and I'm not saying that this point should dictate every aspect of your life and your diet. I don't want it to come across that way as being overly dogmatic. However, a point that we have to think about is that when it comes to things like fruit and vegetable intake and a lot of these things and the various phytonutrients, antioxidants, the medical literature doesn't show an upward threshold to some of the health benefits, right? There doesn't appear to be an upper threshold. We could argue that it obviously hypothetically exists, and it should exist. I mean, it's common sense that it would exist. But as many researchers, doctors, other people have noted, we don't actually know where those thresholds are. And thus far, what we find is that with a lot of these foods, that the higher the intake goes, there is a slight reduction in all sorts of things in the body. Inflammatory markers, oxidative stress, lower cancer rates, cardiovascular disease, so on. Right? And so when we're talking about our training, recovery from training, even the oxidative stress from that. When you start looking at a lot of these benefits, there may not be an upper threshold. So, when people say things like, well, I get to a point where this is just, discretionary calories or whatever, and I meet my RDA, my micronutrient sufficiency for, these various vitamins and minerals, okay? Particularly, again, some of the antioxidants. Well, that's well and good, but the RDA is your minimums, right? That's your minimums, and I'm not saying that all of them will always have benefits beyond that, because they may not. But when we get in some of these topics, we know that having a large diversity of these things helps. Okay, having a large diversity of them helps. Having a more diverse diet in terms of the fruits and vegetables and things that we eat also has benefits to gut biome. And if we're able to eat more of these things and we have a larger diversity of them, our gut flora is going to flourish more. We're going to have better potential overall health. We're going to have better recovery outcomes. So when we really start looking at these things, it is not a case where we could say that we're optimal just because we're reaching a minimum. And again, I'm not making a case for supplementation here, because I am not a fan of supplementation for these things. But what I am making the case for is that when it comes to this and people say, well, I'm just filling these other calories with whatever. And I'm not saying that's a terrible thing to do. I'm not saying that that's dumb. I'm not saying it makes you a bad person. What I'm saying is it may not be optimal, and there may be benefits. And I think we can make a case for there being benefits to consuming these things in larger amounts. So what do I mean? I mean, this actually comes up when people will say, well, I'm choosing to fill this, whatever, with this extra fatty meat for calories or whatever it is they're doing. And I would look at that and go, are you sure that that's ideal? Or let's say I like white rice. I eat it sometimes. Are you sure that couldn't be better filled with a sweet potato? Okay. Or some other fruit, or some cantaloupe, or some blueberries. All of these nutrient-dense foods. Because at the end of the day, we know that these things, and there's not always an upper threshold. Furthermore, there are individual wide varieties of phytonutrients and antioxidants that are oftentimes unique to some of these individual foods that have benefits that don't necessarily, what's the word I'm looking for? There may be synergies between them. So eating that larger diversity of them, is that an area in your food where that same food could be filled with that? I think we can even make the case for, as something I pointed out, doing more training for the purpose of allowing us to consume more carbohydrate-rich foods, particularly these sort of whole foods. If we burn through an extra 300 or 400 or 500 calories a day so that we can consume these, and particularly carbohydrate foods, to where we have other metabolic benefits. As we increase carbs, energy turnover itself starts going up. Would we be better filling it with these foods? Would we get better training outcomes? And again, I'm making the case for optimal. I want to be clear here. This is making the case for optimal. I'm not saying you cannot get phenomenal results or have phenomenal health or phenomenal recovery without doing this. But I am throwing out the point that when people assume, because I hear that a lot, and I've seen a lot of flexible dieters and other people will make those claims, well, whatever, I do this and I feel whatever with whatever junk I want to eat, because it doesn't matter because I've reached my sufficiency over here. It's like, okay, fine. But is that necessarily optimal? And that's the point, is that a lot of them, and I've seen this case made even by trainers and coaches, they're like, yeah, well, I mean, I hit these minimums, or my client did, or I did, and therefore there's no benefit to eating these other whole foods or these fruits or vegetables in place of just whatever I want to eat, that there's no benefit. And I don't know that that is the case. I don't know that scientifically or logically that's the case. And again, I understand if they're saying, look, I want to eat my treat foods, it's what I need, or whatever reason. Okay, fine. Again, no problem with that, as long as that's what it is, and we're freely admitting that that is the case. And if that's the case, then you do you, right? But just be aware that that is because you feel that you need those foods for whatever reason. Not my place to judge. But just be honest with yourself about it. It's not because you think that that's necessarily optimal, that there's no benefits to, filling it with X amount of, chocolate-covered Oreos or donuts or butter or whatever you're choosing to eat, overeating some blueberries or sweet potato or, some cherries or something, okay? Or some watermelon, right? Even normal potatoes. Just be aware that there may be benefits to the other. And am I saying it's going to be an enormous benefit? No. No, probably not. It may be a very small benefit. But just be aware that it is a benefit and it is a compromise. But again, I will be the first to admit, okay, fine, if that's what you need at this point in your life journey for your quality of life. Again, I'm not judging, and I'm not telling you that you have to do this. All right? It's not a judgment. It's simply stating, just be aware that that's the choice you're choosing to make. And accept it for what it is. I'm only making the case of optimization and a bit of nuance here. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.